What's up, y'all? I'm Ra, and this is the Reparations Show.
Don't want no spare change or handout. I see that everywhere I go. Want you to reach right in your conscience, baby, and give me everything I'm owed. I'm talking about them reparations, reparations. Oh, honey, give me all my money, money. Reparations, reparations. Give me everything you owe. Reparations, reparations. For all them years of frustrations. This is the freaking Reparations Show.
Hi, everybody. I am Malika Imhotep, and I am so excited to be hosting the Reparations Show today. So much love to my dear Morgan, who is producing this round and invited me to host during my birthday month, still celebrating. I'm on the Taurus Gemini cusp, but I've been doing a lot of my celebrating in the Gemini time. So thank you to all the Geminis for letting me take some shine. And thank you to all the Tauruses for keeping us all grounded. I want to open the space with a poem by Lucille Clifton. And this poem has literally been in my brain, like on loop for like the past week, like I think since my birthday. And it's a poem called If I Stand in My Windows, which was introduced to me by like my love and comrade, Jazz Franklin. So I'm gonna pull up this poem now. And I just invite you to take a minute and like get present with yourself. However you're sitting, take a moment to feel into like whatever's supporting you. That's the ground or the chair. If your back is pressed against something, for me, it's like the balls of my feet are on the ground, and because I'm short, and my thighs are pressed into the chair. And I just invite you to take 3 deep breaths at your own time, but just so we can all just meet here on the same page. Thank you. And if you feel like there's like a part of your body that would like any like love or attention, feel free to take a hand and put it there. I'm gonna drink some water. And now I'll share Lucille Clifton's If I Stand in My Window. If I stand in my window, naked in my own house, and press my breast against the window pane, like black birds pushing against glass, because I am somebody in a new thing. And if the man comes to stop me in my own house, naked in my own window, saying I have offended him, I have offended his gods, let him watch my black body push against my own glass. Let him discover self. Let him run naked through the streets, crying, praying in tongues. So thank you to Lucille Clifton and all of her light. And may we all just like embrace, being naked in our own houses, pressing up against our own glass and refusing any shame. Let those who see, let those who witness, even witness this right now through the glass of your computer screen or your phone screen, let you discover self. And if you're scandalized, may that scandalization lead you to find a new God or more gods or a deeper relationship with your own God. So thank y'all for entering with me. Now I'm going to do a bit of like self-bibliomancy, where I'm going to pull up my manuscript. So I have a poetry manuscript that is coming into the world soon. I've like been very like whispery about it. So this that I'm saying on internet is a big deal. But my forthcoming manuscript, Gossipin', which is a poetry collection, that my debut poetry collection, which is going to be published by Red Hen Press, will be out sometime next spring. And it's not my first time publishing things. Like folks know my work with the Church of Black Feminist Thought, we self-published a Black Feminist Study Theory Atlas that's available on small press distribution. And I've also published many chapbooks with my father, and I've published like articles in my mother's newspaper. So like, the writing's been in the world. But this is going to be a beautiful little book with my name on the front, and it's called Gossiping, and it's inspired by the plant medicine of cotton root. And yeah, I guess I will go into my self-bibliomancy now. Thank y'all for my patience through the digital stutters. Or yes, that's what. Yeah, and I'm going to start. So with the bibliomancy, which is a practice that I've witnessed folks like Marvin K. White, Alexis Pauline Gumbs do, and always been really moved by. If we were sitting in a room together, right, I would ask folks to come up with numbers and to share the numbers, and then I would read a number for that page. Since I am in my, little home studio with an audience of one for now, I'm like taking a moment to come up with a number, and the number in my head is 4, and I'm going to read page 4, which fittingly enough is like a little introductory moment. So it says Gossypium herbaceum, which is the plant name for cotton. Official use. The root bark of this plant was officially recognized in the USP from 1863 to 1916 for its effects on the uterine organs. In the 19th century, the active principle was called gossiping. Other Afro-American use, quote, in 1840, a French writer, Bouchel, reported that the root bark of cotton was widely used by Negro slaves in America to induce abortion. According to John U. Lloyd, the credit for the discovery of its uses must be given to the Negroes of the South. And that's an excerpt from a book called Hoodoo Medicine, Gullah Herbal Remedies by Faith Mitchell. And so my poetic offering on this page that I read reads, and so they must have plunged hands deep beneath the field, gently undoing the crop to coax it out of its medicine. And so they must have taken it gingerly in their hands, tucked into waistbands, smuggled into kitchens where it became powder and poultice and tea. And so they must have made a place for that which was cast out, a plot to catch their waters, tears, spit, blood, and indignation. And so they must have gotten familiar with the inside parts, the space between before and after invasion. And so they must have returned somewhere, dreamt of another place, found themselves on new altars in spaces kin they could only imagine would call home. Thank you. So that's like that's like my prose intro. So that's the page that wanted to be read. And the last poem I'll read of my own offerings before we get to the meat. My real intent, my real purpose in hosting was just to bring y'all some of the stars in my personal constellation and to bring y'all into the spaces of radical dialogue that I've been privileged to be in over the past year, the spaces of connection, of collaboration and co-liberation that I've been held by. So before I transition there, I want to read one more poem of mine. And this one is called Miss Graham Tells My Younger Self a Blue Joke, or a praise song for Janie's pear tree. And this poem is dedicated to a woman named Queen Elizabeth Graham, who was one of my kind of adopted maternal figures, a member of my mother's constellation, who taught me how to pray and other things. One day, the children asked, "Why Grandma always sitting on the porch with her legs wide open?" And the grown folks answered, she just keeping the flies off her watermelon. And I can see her, clutching her knees in a fit of laughter, her lips curled to smile, her eyes coy in their gentle humor. I laugh before understanding the joke, this funk, the open-legged bait, grandma's body a living thing, its organisms courting other bodies, a sweet lore, protecting her fruit. I sit between open legs, other fingers greasing my parts. I inhale deep and don't say nothing. Whole black seeds slip out the side of my mouth, new laughter buzzing about my knees. To this memory, I pray a poem to meet my baby cousins in them before the shame, before the too harsh scrubbing and blistered skin, before callous in the simple invasion of disgust, before the snickers and sidelong glances, before she learns herself the disquieting odor of a Bradford pear tree. Let there be the panting breath of the breeze, the dust-bearing bee sunk into the sanctum of a bloom, the ecstatic shiver from root to branch. Let there be truth, funky like how we grow to like it. Let there be a mama who ain't afraid to tell it. Thank you. I'm like snapping for myself because I'm in a room alone. So with that, I want to bring up someone who is a personal adopted mama to me. And I can call her Mama D, but y'all can't. So that's something special. And first, before I start to gush, I'm going to read the bio that was sent. Dr. Doris Davenport, Dr. D, is a 72-year-old activist, educator, writer, literary, and performance poet. Born and raised in Cherokee homelands, colonized by Europeans as Northeast Georgia. This area influenced her early belief in alternative magical possibilities. This place also rooted her in struggle against all forms of oppression. She is an Afro-Latin lesbian feminist visionary, pronouns person and per. Degrees from Payne College, which is also my father's alma mater, SUNY Buffalo, where Per got Per's MFA. The University of Southern California, where Dr. Doris Diosa Davenport got a PhD in African American literature. Recently published books, Rectify My Soul in 2018 and Dancing in Time in 2019 are available on Amazon, and has work in the new anthology that if you don't have, you need to get, Mouths of Rain, an anthology of Black lesbian thought, which was edited by Dr. Brianna Simone Jones. Has predominant beliefs in truth and art. And please, please, please contact Dr. Davenport for lectures, workshops, and collaborations. You can also find Dr. D on Facebook, and we're going to get this webpage and blog together. So without further ado, I welcome to this virtual stage Dr. Doris Diosa Davenport, and I'm gonna have you on the screen while I gush about you and tell the story of how we met.
This is for you.
Thank you. So y'all, a couple months ago, my daddy, Akbar Imhotep, who's probably tuning in right now, was on the phone with me, and we were preparing for a Kwanzaa event that we were doing. We were deciding that we was going to come together and have some future focused Kwanzaa time that wasn't just about the past. And so he's like, yeah, I got this home girl. I don't think that's the words that he said, but he was basically like, there's this poet who is my peer, but more like your peer. And I'm like, what does that mean, Daddy? He's like, well, she's my age, but she's one of them, lesbian feminists, it's real. If you go look on her poets and writers page, you see she's in the LGBTQ community.
He said, what?
And I was like, what are you talking about? Who is this woman? Like, I had a very like, Daddy, who are you talking about? You mean to tell me it's some Georgia born and bred, Payne College educated Black lesbian feminist running around here that I don't know about? What are you saying? And I very quickly went to Googling, found out. I got learned. I learned who Dr. Doris Diosa Davenport was. I sent a very excited email, and that was the beginning of this relationship that has blossomed and is so nourishing for me, and I believe so for Mama D as well. So thank you for joining me. Thank you for sharing yourself with this audience. And I'm gonna be quiet now and let you let you talk.
All right then, Ra. All right. Thank you. Thank you. I cannot, my fingers won't snap, good people. So I still do this or that to indicate applause. So I applaud your new book and thank you for that introduction, Ra, daughter Ra, as I like to call you. Thank you so much. And thank you for those poems. That last one, the seeds in the watermelon, and for a mama to tell it like it is, that's beautiful. People, thank you, everyone. I'm thanking all of you, Morgan, everyone who has created this show. Thank you. Whoever set up one day and started collaborating and brainstorming and created such an entity as the show. Thank you, all of you. So I wanted to give a bibliography or share one, but I didn't get to that yet. So I'm going to share that later. But you should know that somehow included in everything I'm going to be saying or reading tonight is, among other people, Nina Simone, Lucille Clifton, Robert Hayden, Plato's Allegory of the Cave, Jimi Hendrix, Octavia Butler, Margaret Walker, Ida B. Wells, and Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois or Dubose. Run Takaki's Iron Cages, Leslie Mormon Silko's novel Ceremony, for starters. So I didn't have time to write that down. To begin, I will be reading from my first 3 books of poetry, the first published in 1980, the third one in 1991. And they are 3 of 12 books that I've published. In these books, I created worlds that I wanted to see through critiquing the hypocrisy I did not wish to see. Or in those works by centering me. What does that mean? Yes, I am from the countryside in Northeast Georgia. And sometimes I got a twang. And yeah, I did grow up liking country and Western music. You want to make something out of it, okay? You don't want to. And so I have a lot of different aspects that make up me. And so if I choose to walk down a city sidewalk barefoot, that really ain't your business. But somebody wanted to make it be their business. You know what I'm saying, daughter Ra? And that is when I have to go off in a poem, okay? And so for the first 3 books that I wrote, as I was much younger, much more beautiful, and apparently desirable to the whole world, because for some people, beauty causes one response, and that is to fuck, okay? That is, unfortunately, a programmed response. That's not the only one. People should have been dropping to their knees saying, oh, you are beautiful, thank you, like I do when I see a sunset. I don't want to physically aggress that sunset. I just thank it for being in my life. I might want to take its picture. I ask permission of a sunset to take its picture. Well, anyway, Black females are the norm for me. The first poem, though, is an invitation for everybody because I think it can apply to everyone. This is called You Too. Everyone's beginning was a once upon a time. And nobody meant to grow up to be mediocre, mundane, or meaningless. So nobody wants to be reminded that she or he or they grew up to be mediocre, mundane, or meaningless. So let's start there, beyond the ordinary and once upon a time. If we start there, the question is, what could it mean to be free? As Nina Simone sang, I wish I knew how it could feel to be free. I wish I could break all the chains holding me. You know that song, don't you, Ross? Some of you, I hope, in the audience know it. If you don't, try to find that. I know it's available online. Think about it and redefine what freedom is. Anytime we have a need, I think this is what this poem is saying. If you have like a need to oppress somebody else in the name of finding your freedom, that's not freedom. So I'm going to suggest a few things. Freedom from linguistic prisons and false paradigms. For example, people mistakenly identify something called white privilege. That is not what is going on. It is white pathology. It is a disease to put colored on one water fountain and white on the other and then call that privilege. It is a disease for a white boy to put his neck on a black man's neck and slowly choke the life out of him. That's pathology. Good people own it. That's what it is. Societally, white supremacist, societally, what's the word, approved? Well, also male privilege, same thing. All males seem to off and on just go ahead and just give in to the notion that, oh yeah, I got this privilege, so if I get mad enough, the toxicity comes to the fore. Just beat somebody up, shoot her. In Atlanta the other day, this male shot his ex-girlfriend and then stole her car. That's pathology. That's sickness. It's not privilege, it's pathology when manifested like that. Systemic toxic male pathology, own it. Another term people use is heteronormative. There's nothing normal about enforced heterosexuality. It's heterosexist abnormality, abomination. I'm still working on that one. The new term is BIPOC, B-I-P-O-C. I ain't no effing BIPOC. And the other phrase, the other term is minorities. No, good people. Melanated people are a global majority. The only minority in the world, on the globe, is Euro-Caucasians. I'm talking about the globe. Just broaden our perspectives. So that these are some terms I want to share. That's what's behind that poem, You Too. Nobody meant to grow up to be mediocre, meaningless, maudlin, not even just mean. Nobody meant to grow up to be pathologically defined. And I want you to notice as I read these poems, notice that the greater your anger at me or hearing the truth, that is the greater indication of your self-righteous denial, your false contempt, the greater your involvement too in your oppressive cage. Start here. Nobody meant to grow up to be mediocre. Then there is another poem from my first book, I think, called It's Like This. That one has been reprinted digitally. And Ra, read this, and then we're going to dialogue about this one, okay? If you feel like it. Because I think this is still applicable. This is called Sojourner, You Should Not Have Done That. It's from It's Like This. You told them what was what, I guess. You really made your point. You stood them on their heads, but I got one question. Why did you bare your chest? You set an awesome precedent. Now, every time they see us coming, they get ready for a show. They get ready for a comedy or a tragedy. To some, but entertainment to most. And if we don't bare our chest, they come right up and rip off the dress, pull out our hair, pull off a tit, sometimes in the enthusiasm. I don't know which is worse, the mule of the world or a mule trying to prove her sex. You told them the truth, Mama Sojourner. We knew you were, and you are a woman too, but all Black women inherited your theatrics. So now, what are we supposed to do?
Wow.
What's your response?
Well, you joke that I love two poems, but I love many poems, and this was one. When I read it, I literally like sent it to Miyuki, who's gonna be my second guest. Like, oh my God, this person is in my brain. But I think that it's fascinating. I actually just bought a postcard, believe it or not. Part of me wants to get up and grab it, but I was just at a museum earlier and they had this postcard of Sojourner Truth. And on the bottom, it said, I sell the shadow to support the substance. And it's a reproduction of this, I think how they say it is carte de viste. So Sojourner Truth, and Frederick Douglass, a lot of early abolitionists used to reproduce these small cards that people would buy, and the money would go to the cause. But then you would have like a little pocket Sojourner or a little pocket Frederick Douglass. It became mementos that people would treasure. And then there's this professor at Berkeley who has collected them, and that's a whole other weird story that we don't have to get into. Okay. But I actually think a lot about this moment or this story of Sojourner Truth bearing her breast in a presentation, or not a conference. That's not the word, but like during a presentation, being accosted by a crowd and like proving her sex by showing her breast. And I think that, like, I'm trying to remember if I've said this to you before, but a lot of my work in like my academic work and also in like my performance work, where I've been using the venue of burlesque to like tell or to answer Black feminist questions, or to like think through, to put my body into these questions, is thinking about what does it mean to inherit those theatrics, but not in a way of like, not to titillate or to like feed the like racialized hungers of like a white supremacist audience, but like with my investment being on the like internal experience of like my Black and feminine body in performance. So it's like, for me, it raises this question of like prove like, it's not about proving one's sex to an audience of naysayers, but about playing with sex, if you will. Like, I'm like, what are the words coming out my mouth? But about playing with sex to answer intimate interior questions. And yeah, this poem makes me think a lot, because I think it raises the terms that I'm thinking about all the time, but like lands in a different place than I land. So I'm glad that you like, you calling me out of my shell.
To have that's not what I'm doing. Wait, that's not what I'm doing. Wait, Rod daughter, that's not what I'm doing. That poem is meant as a well, I don't know, I guess it could be. It is questioning what I see as still too many Black women, particularly young Black women, of their being coerced or pushed into a corner of, I don't know, they seem to be objectively sexualized, and they seem to be doing it themselves. What that poem is about is those interlocking grids or iron cages of imprisonment. That is back to the pathologies of the systemic interlocking grids of racism, sexism, classism, and religiosity, which keep everybody unfree. And the one group of people, Black women, is the one that apparently everybody thinks that, they got, they can just come up and do stuff. But I'm trying to be aware of time. And I feel like I'm out of time, and I do apologize. But I think, don't you have some other?
Well, I haven't gotten no notice yet. We have time, Morgan says. We have time.
Really? Okay. Well then, my poems are questioning how deep and how much are we invested in the payoffs of our being complicitous in our own oppressions. I have tried, for example, all of my life to speak on and avoid or transform or evade these iron cages: sexism, racism, classism, religiosity, for lack of a better word. I, in my presence, have tried to honor the ancestors, a word I learned from Afrishi Asunji, and the ancestors. For example, my hair is becoming a Frederick Douglass, okay? That's what that's doing. That's about that, okay? It's going to turn into a Frederick Douglass, but all that power and glory is going to be. And I have been trying to free people's minds from centuries of slangs, much like Sojourner was saying
Mhm.
in this poem by Robert Hayden. You know, you live free or you die. You walk. We started this walk. We started this journey together. I think that is good, Amal. Or you die. That's what she said. That's all she had to say. So I'm gonna read. I'm gonna read this poem from Voodoo Child. Also, the world's only minority. I have poems. I hope we have some audience people. I have poems which, just so you know, um, it's an equal opportunity bashing. A friend of mine called it bashing. I bash people, everybody. Okay, so yeah, I came out as a lesbian in LA. Ooh, you should hear the poems I got when I got mad at all them lesbians. It's particularly the ones who seem to be weak on politics, but they want to come at me like a false man. I'm like, damn, if I want a real man, I know where to get some, right? I ain't got to fool with this foolishness. It's like, no, 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 back off. Anyway, I got poems about that. I got poems about my biological family. It's like, no, let me tell you what's wrong with that, okay? And they're all poems, right? Anyway, here's the one that um, remember now, the more you get mad, the more it means is that you are engaged in your own oppression. You in denial. Just one question for the world's only real minority. Disasters somehow bring out curiosity. Did you see that? Rubbernecking on the highway into the other lane. 10-car pileup, blood all over 5 cars. And how do you feel now? The microphone shoved into the face of a surviving family member after 1 or 5 have been murdered, accidentally killed, raped, or naturally dead. How do you feel about that? They say it's only human to wonder about deformity, 2-headed snakes, double yolked eggs, child prodigies, and adult idiots. We wonder, they say. It's natural. Being curious, naturally, and human, me sometimes. I now wonder what it feels like to spread blood all over the lanes of the world for centuries, to rape, murder, lynch, and legislate people out of their rights, their land, their lives, to be responsible for or beneficiary of mega death and a part of the most singular, smallest, most despised, accursed, and cursed minority in the world. Tell me just one question. Just how does it feel to be a white male?
Mic drop. Okay. Did
That
you
was
have
in
some?
1980.
I was saying, did you have some annotations for that one that you want to take us out with?
Very briefly, I think it would be to notice, everybody, to notice that that entity, if we put our attention somewhere else, then that entity will be eliminated. That's all. It's about where we put our valuable attention, what we choose to notice, how we choose to reshape our emotions, as Afrishia Sunji says, reshape our thoughts. Therefore, ultimately, we reshape reality and we get to be free. Thank you.
I'm muted. Please, everybody, join me in sending love and appreciation to Dr. Doris Diosa Davenport. Thank you so much for welcoming me into your life and having me in yours. And y'all, literally, if you are ever trying to, break some stuff down, we're all on this Black feminist hype, as we should be. Let's not forget to lift up and work with and hire and seek out like our living arbiters of like not only histories but of theory, you know what I'm saying, like into theory, like people who are living into theory, who are poeting, who are dancing, who are performing in our now, who shape these moments that we fantasize about. So I'm just so honored to be in active and like mutually nourishing relationship with Dr. Doris Diosa Davenport, and I hope you will too. So get them books, you know, and bring her to your institutions, okay? Like, let's not pretend. So thank you so much. As kind of a transition point, I want to invite y'all into a kind of like somatic or movement practice that I've learned from somebody named Goddess Aphrodisiac, aka Tina P, who does really lovely sensuality dance classes and full moon circles. But one of the things she has us do at the beginning of her class is to take one hand and to put it under the opposite underarm. And just make it cozy there. Then take that opposite hand and place it somewhere on your neck or shoulder that feels comforting. And then with your breath, you're just going to take your ear to one shoulder and then bring it over to the other on the exhale. So we're going to inhale and exhale. And then one more on your own time. And exhale, and we can shake it out, shake it out. Thank y'all so much. And thank you for accepting the invitation into kind of like some body mind practice. So next I have a in-house guest here, my lovely collaborator, co-liberator, Miyuki Baker,
hey.
Who is hosting me here in East Oakland.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna, before we dive in, I'm gonna read their bio and then we'll get into dialogue. So Miyuki Baker is a non-binary Zainichi artist and scholar living in Oakland, committed to beautiful scholarship for our collective liberation. They're currently finishing their PhD in performance studies at UC Berkeley, writing about histories of mutual aid in East Oakland. And their pronouns are they, them, and theirs. So Miyuki and I have been collaborating on a spiritual and political education project called the Church of Black Feminist Thought for the past 3 years, since 2018. And I feel like technically 2017, because we started, talking about it, dreaming it up. And so I'm really honored. Not only do we do that work together, Miyuki is also a scholar of solidarity economies and mutual aid networks and different practices that are sometimes called reparations or sometimes radically revisioned as something completely different. So to start, Miyuki, I want to welcome you. So welcome.
Thank you.
Is there anything you would like to share before we dive wherever we're diving?
I'm a parent to a 2-year-old.
Yay.
And Auntie Malika has been reading books to baby Maru the past couple of days after a long time of not being able to see each other. And I just want to give you a hug.
Thank you.
And this is still surreal that you get to be so up close to me without a mask. So.
I know. Shout out to modern medicine for what it's worth. But yeah. So I'm trying to remember timing we were going to start with the breathing chorus. So Miyuki and I's work is inspired and kind of anchored by the work of who my friend Sophia calls this person my Black feminist fairy godmother, but it's Alexis Pauline Gumbs, a brilliant world maker, a brilliant Black feminist scholar and practitioner who has created these oracle cards for a practice that they call Black feminist breathing. And if you're not familiar, you should definitely look into it. There are online courses that you can take, and there's an oracle deck. So we want to start today by inviting you into a breathing chorus. So we're gonna do the oracle. And we got Bayard Rustin. So each of these icons, and these are collages made by Alexis Pauline Gumbs, each of these icons corresponds with a mantra
that falls into either love, light, change, or freedom. And so Bayard Rustin's quote is, "The power of love in the world is the greatest power existing."
Wow.
So we're going to say that for, what, a minute?
Yeah, so we're going to set a minute timer over on this end and invite you to participate. But again, it's an invitation. And we're just going to give our breath to these words. The power of love in the world is the greatest power existing. And you can play with the pace. You can slow it down, speed it up. You can whisper it. You can yell it. And we'll do it for a minute. And that'll be how we enter the space.
Mm-hmm. The power of love in the world is the greatest power existing. The power of love in the world is the greatest power existing. The power of love in the world is the greatest power existing. The power of love in the world is the greatest power existing.
The power of love in the world is the greatest power existing.
Love.
The power of love
the
in
world is the greatest power existing. The power of love in the world is the greatest power existing. The power of love is the greatest power existing.
The power of love in the world is the greatest power existing. The power of love in the world is the greatest power existing. The power of love in the world is the greatest power existing. Thank you.
Yup. I had to get that Murph energy in somehow.
That was so fun, y'all. I hope you participated or at least got some joy witnessing us in breathing chorus together.
Yeah.
So Miyuki.
Yes.
What is reparations to you, but in general? Like, what, as a scholarly, trained studier?
Yeah. No, I mean, first of all, like, I just need to start with who I need to start with, which is Poverty Scholars at Poor Magazine in East Oakland. So they just dropped this amazing, thick volume called Poverty Scholarship, Poor People-Led Theory, Art, Words, and Tears Across Mama Earth. And like, this is my Bible of what reparations is. I kid you not. Like, everyone needs to get this who wants to learn from these brilliant people who they're like, stop calling people in the institution, the formal academic institutions, the scholars. Like, we're the ones that have been living this. We are the poverty scholars. You are our mentees. And we love you and accept you. You have a responsibility and accountability. But we are going to lovingly tell you that you have the dis-ease of, being material benefiters of like hoarded, stolen wealth, right? So they're the first and foremost people that like I just automatically think of when I think of what reparations is. So they talk about community reparations, which can look any kind of way. It can mean like literal money that we send, but it can also be organizational privilege that we redistribute, which means like, we have these computers and printers and the ability to write bureaucratic emails, and we may know people in these positions of power, and we can do all that middle work, and that's also reparation work. And so they have something called the community or Bank of Community Reparations. I'm in the Solidarity family.
Can you tell us who Poor Magazine is?
Yeah, so they are a poor and indigenous people-led media arts organization, grassroots organization in East Oakland, started by two unhoused women, formerly unhoused. And yeah, they started this beautiful project called Homefulness, and they also have been continuing to support Solidarity family members who are people with race, class, and academic privilege, like myself, to see the diseases that we have, the spiritual diseases of continuing to be a part of these like very violent systems, right? And I think, there's a lot to say about the different ways in which white supremacy, settler colonialism, and capitalism affect people of color, white people, like financially wealthy people. But I would say that like the spiritual disease, like Dr. Davenport was talking about that. It's not, it's white, what did she call it? Pathology. And they talk about that a lot at at Poor Magazine. And just like thinking about the disconnection from our own families, like the way that we've been uprooted. Anyways, it's all just a big thing. Like I highly recommend folks to follow Poor Magazine and take their People School. It was really eye-opening and just like continues to ask me the questions I need to be asking in order to be like, okay, am I still committing? Am I still showing up like in authentic ways?
Yeah, that's so good. I think one of the things I've learned from you, from People School, is about, like you're saying, the ways that, you know, there are privileges, there's like language domination skills. Linguistic domination skills. So how deep is it? You know, I am a grad student for what it's worth. And I have a language tool, like the language I know how to speak with, whether or not I speak with it all the time, is a resource that can be used to leverage or to get access to other resources, like you said, writing emails, or really not taking for granted the fact that like class is more than just the number in your bank account, but like what networks are you connected to, and like how in service to, you know, whatever your politics are. Like if you are abolitionist, if you are Marxist, socialist, communist, even if you like a, I don't even know what to call it, but if you're like somebody who considers himself a capitalist but still into social justice and you're working that out for you, like how are you doing that by not giving yourself like getaway free tickets? Like, oh, you know, I'm BIPOC, so I don't need to do that, or I don't need to volunteer, or I don't need to be thinking about this.
That was the big shift for me too, because I grew up like lower income, but I've been in the academy, higher ed, for like a decade now. And and also just I had that tendency of like wanting to write about marginalized communities. I'm like, I'm from marginalized, like QT-POC, da 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 da. And it's like I realized that mentality of always needing, not to say that you know there isn't good work being done in the academy that's like really mindfully done of like autoethnographic, but when I first came across Poor Magazine, I was like, I want to write about them. And they're like, please stop writing about us. Write about your own complicity. Write about your own context. Write about your own feelings of the disease of like being separated from your family, like that's inculcated in the culture. And yeah, I'm just eternally grateful to them and their work. And that was a huge shift for me of realizing like there's work that I specifically need to be doing because of the positionality and the way that people respect me and look at me differently. So it's not like talking for poor people, but it's like, you know, working with them and being able to really speak from my own heart about the issues that I'm experiencing too, so that people who look like me will be like, oh, you're right. Yeah. I experienced that too. Like, I'm going to wake up in a different way than I am if, you know, a panhandler is asking, you know, like it's just different.
Yeah. So. Oh my God. Like, thank you for the ways that you've really given your head and your heart to this body of theory, to this body of work. Even it's been inspiring and shifting things in me over the past years to watch you do this work and watch the ways that you intimately relate to the idea that we've talked about, just being with the things that inspire us as opposed to trying to master them. Yes. So I just want to say thank you. And also thank you for teaching me. Like I've said a number of times that Miyuki is a person who just like inspired me or showed me how to be magical every day. Like Miyuki just lives in a space of magic and not even just in a like, you know, this kind of way, but in just practical magic, like the magic of like eating tamarind or the magic of I'm looking now at this moon calendar that you've repurposed. And like, so I just think that there's a way that your theory plus practice, your praxis is so present. You know, it's not a secret, and it being open, you know, it has invited me into my own. So thank you for that. And I think that this is a good kind of like transition point to the other layer of this conversation we wanted to have, which is about our work together through or with the Church of Black Feminist Thought, and like what it means for us to be in this interracial collaboration doing the work of Black feminist study. Yeah, I don't have any like pointed questions, but I just know that that's something that we've been wanting to explore for some time.
Exactly. I know. And I think that the Atlanta shootings, at that moment, we were like, oh, we should. I think it was my cousin, Roby, that was like, you and Malika should have a public conversation about Asian Black solidarity. And I think that there's been moments that were either spoken or unspoken of like confusion to my presence in the room or as a co-convener. And I think that, yeah, this is transparently like a very live conversation of like what it means for us to be doing this work as an interracial collaboration duo.
Yeah. And I think, you know, we started as two people who were inspired by each other's practice. And wanting to come together to do something that would lift up Black feminism and make Black feminist thought, theory, practice, art, etc., accessible to a bigger audience, a broader cross section of people that would kind of like take away all the like academic mystification. Excuse me. And so I think that like, trying to send my burp somewhere else.
It smells like rose.
Oh, thank you. I was like, okay. But yeah, we came together as two people who were passionate about a shared thing, Black feminism. We're learning with it, who admired each other's practices. And that was like the ground we met on. It wasn't like, this is a
Black and Asian solidarity
project. Wasn't it. We were people, and I don't say this in a way to like discount difference. Like if you know me, you know I don't discount race. Like don't do that. But I wasn't just like, oh yeah, well I'm collaborating with Miyuki, who was Asian American. Like it just wasn't there. It was like, yeah, Miyuki is a badass organizer and an artist and a zinester. And I got some stuff to say and ideas about Black feminism. This is what we're going to do together. And I think there have definitely been moments where I felt like, oh, this is a Black feminist thing. I should be able to do it by myself. That's a lie. That's a lie. One, because like the individual is not real. But also because like, the collaborative element is what makes it work. You know, it's such a part of the spirit of what we're doing is collaboration.
Yeah, and I think the Combahee River Collective Statements quote of like, if Black women were free, everyone would be free because, you know, for Black women to be free, all the systems of oppression would have to be destroyed, and that would therefore, you know, free. Like, I think that I come back to that over and over again because it's like, why am I doing this work? I've had to ask myself, like, why is this one of my like major kind of theoretical and political homes, like adoptive homes, really? And it's that kind of like expansiveness and inclusivity. You know, it's like that. After living in a society that has been wanting to box me in and like try to categorize me, like it's ironic because I think that a lot of people, they ask me like, oh, it's so specific, Black feminism. And I'm like, no, it's specific and it's so freaking expansive. Like that's the whole liberatory potential of it, right? So, and like I recently came across Anne Chang's work, who wrote Ornamentalism, and that was really revolutionary for me to be like, ooh, Asian feminist theory, hello. And she's in conversation with Toni Morrison and like really bringing Black and Asian feminist theories into convo. But I think that for us, I think it's really grounding to be able to say like, the folks who are really down to make mistakes, like you're welcome. The folks that are down to like be in this with us are welcome. Like we never said this is a Black space, and we never said this is like
a BIPOC
or
space.
this is a what we didn't say this is a mixed space. And like there would be people being like, oh, can I come?
Yeah.
And we're like, we're here to celebrate Black feminist thinkers. Like if you're here to celebrate and like not just celebrate in the pedestal way, but
we did have some clarity around like that we are in the space, right? We are centering the voices of Black folks, right? We are like really like caring and careful about like how discourse is shaped, right? But I do think there's something. Well, my brain is going in 1,000 places, but the thing that I wrote down was freedom. And that connects to me too with some of the things shared or one of the points made by Dr. Davenport, thinking about how do we redefine what freedom is. And I think for me, one of the reasons why I am a Black feminist is because I think like the Black feminist liberatory impulse like lifts up a definition of freedom that is interdependent, that is that is we need each other, that is like in the Combahee River Collective statement, we actually worked this out in real time where you were sharing this. Some of your students were like, I don't know if I buy it. Like if Black women are free, is that gonna free my auntie in Korea? Yeah. And having to really sit there and be like, well, you know what they say is it's not like freedom in representation or freedom in more rich Black people, more resources. It's like freedom equals the destruction of all forms of oppression.
Exactly.
Which is a really solid place to be grounded in, thinking about like, because it's like if we are interpreting Black women's freedom as like more representation in politics or on TV or more capital, more resources, then Black women's freedom isn't gonna liberate us all. But if we understand, like Combahee them did, like these Black lesbian socialist feminists did, that freedom means the destruction of all systems of oppression,
sexism, racism,
capitalism, imperialism, ableism, even things we're still coming to learn, right, and name. Like when we take that as truth as our starting place, then
and that those oppressions are going to look differently and feel differently accordingly, but it's still saying the destruction of these things, right? So super good.
And I think I'm excited for in our next iterations of the Church of Black Feminist Thought to like think about there are people whose names I'm not gonna forget. I think this person's name is Margot. Margot Ray.
Okazawa Ray.
Yeah, like there are people who have been here from the beginning who are living at this particular intersection of like Black and Asian solidarity. I know Black Women Radicals, which is an online platform, has been doing a lot of really dope programming around Black and Asian feminist solidarity. And I think I'm excited to like have some like for our first session, we focused on people. We had a couple pop-up sessions where we focused on themes. And I'm excited to explore all the themes we haven't touched yet. Like I'm excited to touch queerness explicitly. I'm excited to touch like these other kind of intersections or thinking about I don't know, my brain is running at 1,000 miles per hour.
Love is the power of love in the world is the greatest power existing. It all comes down to that.
Yeah.
It comes back to it. It's like a spiral.
Absolutely. Always spirals and cross currents.
Exactly. Yep. Because like my love for you as a co-convener, as like a sister, as a collab, like everything. As an auntie to my baby, right? Like all of those things, those are the things that sustain the work of solidarity. Like we can't ever forget that making a smoothie for you is here. Like that's what we need to keep remembering, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not just like the theories and the words and like the
Absolutely.
intentions even.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
an everyday practice.
Yeah.
It reminds me, I do want to, I know we're like
Yeah.
coming to the end of our segment, but I did see online that a Black feminist organizer passed away today or recently. And the quote that was being shared struck me as relevant to what you just said. So I'm going to find it and read it as a way to like bring us to completion for this portion. It is Linda M. Thurston. And this is a quote from an article, and I'll see if I can find the chat. But Linda M. Thurston was somebody who was very active in the campaign to free Mumia and other political and all political prisoners and abolitionists through and through. And this quote says, "I guess I've come full circle after all these years, realizing that we need the political analysis. We need the political education. We need the strategizing. We need more bodies and we need resources. But we also damn sure better remember that we're human beings and we need to support one another on all levels or we're not going to make it. Sometimes our failure is as simple as calling a meeting at dinner time and not having so much as a pitcher of water at the table. If we're going to survive, if we're going to succeed, if we're going to win, if we're going to free folks, we've got to get better at doing the human piece of building movement by building community." So Linda Thurston Presente, I said that wrong, but thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Yay. Let's clap it up for my in-studio guest. Love and praise. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I'm like, now I'm trying to think of like a embodied way to metabolize that. Maybe it's just movement. I'm gonna move, and I invite you to move too for like 30 seconds. This is gonna be on the internet. Okay. So I am so happy right now to be having these conversations. My little glitter is falling, but it's fine. It's biodegradable if that's relevant. Thank you to everybody who's still tuned in. Thank you to my guests so far, Dr. Doris Diosa Davenport and Miyuki Baker, soon to be doctor on the low, wink, wink, cough, cough. So my next guest is a new co-liberator of my heart, like someone who I linked with in a way that felt kind of cosmic. You know, we were together at a recent hearing at the state legislature in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, participating in the hearing about the bill that would decriminalize sex work in all of Louisiana. And it was, we were kind of lost. We saw each other, I had a shirt on that was resonant. Y'all will hear why in a bit. And we ended up sitting next to each other. We gave testimony. And since we've been in this really exciting collaborative space. So next I'm inviting up Amira Barakat Al-Baladi, an artist, writer, lover, and dreamer. She is a portal to recognizing one's own inherent worth and dignity. She is the founder of Heaven on Earth, a supportive spiritual community for healers who are sex workers, sexual assault survivors, and our allies. Honoring her nomadic lineage, she has traveled and lived all over occupied Turtle Island before rooting down in New Orleans. She is the voice behind the podcast Majnouni Confessions, illuminating her perspective as a Palestinian princess and certified Majnouni. Always controversial and always willing to unapologetically state her truth, she opens up space for so many more Arab baddies, Muslim hoes, and unconventional healers to do the same. So without further ado, Amira, I welcome you to the Reparations Show.
Hi. Thanks, Sarah.
Hey, boo, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm great. So good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. How are you feeling?
I'm good. I'm doing good. I'm a little bit nervous, but I'm excited. I'm excited to be having this conversation. And like, I'm honored that you invited me. And then I love that that like it ties into sex work. Because I think that's just like such an important conversation to have and so healing for us. So I'm really excited about what we're collaborating on. I think it's time.
Is there anything that I can do or we can do together right now to help you like move through some of that nervousness?
Oh no.
Okay.
It's just because when we're talking about stuff like this, because like even with the testimony and stuff, even though I'm not gonna stop talking about it, but there's always like a little bit of a disconnect for me because it's so taboo. Like all the things I love to talk about are so taboo. So then to like, I'm like, okay, well, I got to talk about them in public with everybody. And I love doing that. But then there's also like this still a part of me like that gets like nervous and freaked out about it because it is so taboo. But I think it's time. It's just time to like break those barriers down because, we have like all these different compartmentalizing like spaces that we compartmentalize ourselves into. I feel like what's really like there's like this dominant shift towards like wholeness. Wholeness within the individual and then like wholeness within the collective too, which you can see as like more people speaking their truth and communicating about just the simple realities of their lives, which seems so taboo, like just as sex workers, just to get up and say like, hey, the laws that y'all have criminalizing me are hurting me and here's why. And just to like say our own words is like, and then especially, when we're, people of color coming from different communities, our different communities have different ways that they feel about that stuff. Like Muslims, Arabs don't play that shit. And it's not okay in our community. It's not accepted. Just like being queer, like I've never seen anybody in my community, in my family, like be queer and be accepted. And I'm kind of like, like it's like being in the US and everything, it kind of I get a little bit of a freedom more to like, do certain things that my cousins back home wouldn't be able to do. But I kind of like take that as a responsibility to like show up and talk about these things. Still feel nervous.
Thank you. No, I appreciate you so much. I think, well, honestly, the first time we met was completely different. Didn't even know we had on masks. We were at a first aid training. You helped me get my little puppy water on a hot New Orleans day. So from the beginning, you're caring, and oh, should I do something with my headphones? There's feedback. I don't know how to fix it. Producer help.
Is it me?
Hello? Okay. I think we're good. Oh. Okay. So they're suggesting that Amira, can you mute and then unmute when you're talking? Hello.
Oh, sure.
All right. Okay. Word. Yay. Thank y'all for, technology is being what it is. But I was just sharing that we, like you're kind of carrying, I felt looked after in your presence, but not, and I hope that's not in a weird way, but feel free to call me in if it is. But I'm really grateful that we had this opportunity to meet again in a space that also for me felt and feels kind of like weird, nervous because of the taboos, because of the ways that like I've often kept, like you're saying, parts of myself in different places, right? So when I'm doing my burlesque stuff, is happening in one space. When I'm doing whatever else I'm doing on the internet, it's in another space. When I'm being my professional self, it's in one place. And this does too feel like, for me, a moment of inviting all those pieces in. And I'm really grateful to be in dialogue with you. I know that I said I would start by asking you, as I asked Miyuki, like, what is reparations? But I'm kind of feeling moved to ask actually like to hear a little bit about your, like, how did you get brought into this healing work? Like, what started or lit the spark or inspired you on this path of like your own healing and then offering healing?
Well, it started because I got sick. I was organizing. I was a community organizer, and I really cherished my work and took it really seriously. And like a lot of younger people that are excited about the work, I burned out. Like I burned bright and I burned out, and I got really sick. And in the midst of that, I started doing sex work, and it was great. Like I loved doing it. I loved the freedom that I felt. I loved the money, but I also like heavily felt the stigma. And so like I feel like my healing journey was like a mental health journey, cuz growing up I had always been pathologized as like mentally ill, like having like just having to go to therapists and take medications and stuff. And looking back on it now, I'm just like, no, I just really like I really knew what was going on, and I really knew who I was, and it just wasn't okay with anybody like any status quo around me. Like there was like no status quo existing that could hold space for me. And so it was just like, you're crazy. And I know so many people have that same experience, even if not all the way being pathologized, but just being treated like you're crazy. There's something wrong with you. Like, because you're like, okay, something's wrong with this, with the way things are. Like, I don't like this. I don't see anything in this reality that really represents me. But certain people's stories are systematically denied representation. So like, we don't hear about somebody who was a sex worker in our family and made sure everybody ate. Like we don't hear those stories because it's too taboo. Like there's just so many family secrets. And then the representations in the media and stuff, obviously we already know that they seek to dehumanize us. But what is really interesting to me along my healing journey is that like self-representation has always been a part of it. Because I found this disconnect where I had my online persona. Like as a sex worker, I've done everything in the industry, from escorting, porn, dancing, sensual massage, and I've been a dominatrix. And I was an online financial dominatrix, and my platform was Arab Goddess, You Will Worship Me. And the kink that a lot of people had that came to me was that like, oh, you're supposed to be so oppressed and submissive and you're being a dominatrix. And I thought it was really funny though, because it was just so like, I was just such a natural at it, because everybody can't be a dominatrix. Even if you might think like, if that would be really fun to like cuss somebody out and like, whoop them and take their money. Like, it's not for everybody. But some people it's really for, and I think that more people of color especially need to know about it and know that that's something healing that you can do. And that's a way of making reparations for yourself and working that out with your clients or, whoever you have those personal relationships with. Because that's healing, and that the most taboo things that is like people are afraid to talk about, sexuality can heal those things. And there's a way that it doesn't always have to be us getting fetishized. We can use it to work for us also.
So thank you. Oh my God, everything is so good. I did feel. Oh, can you mute again? I did want to lift up Mistress Velvet, who was a Black sex worker based in Chicago, who was a dominatrix and would have her clients or her Johns read Black feminist texts and do these public performances of like really like submitting to the Black feminine. And her work was something that people were always telling me about when they found out what I was up to, and that I was very like moved and inspired by. So I just wanted to lift her up as another kind of practitioner in this goddess line that I see you as a part of. Can you tell us a little bit about Heaven on Earth?
Sure. Yeah, it was so healing to see Mistress Velvet go viral and the headlines and her photos. And it meant so much to me at the time because the, like, there's like a strong disconnect for a lot of sex workers. Like, it's like something that you do in private and you don't really tell people about it. And it was such a huge moment for me, personally, seeing her go viral after having worked as a dominatrix, doing that type of like doing like racial humiliation and re-education with my clients and customers, where I felt like it was even though it was like what I was doing and I was having fun doing it, there was still a part of me that felt ashamed of it and like kept it a secret and didn't tell people and wanted it to be a secret. So it was like it represented like a really strong turning point, when Mistress Velvet went viral and so many people got exposed to her message, her image, her work. I feel like that's like you can't even quantify like what type of impact that had culturally. And it's really exciting to be, you know, in this wave. Like it's a really strong current, a wave that's moving that nobody can stop, and it is the reclaiming of the divine feminine and the worship of the goddess energy and bring heaven down to earth. And this is like something that we just remember in our bodies, you know, and it's so natural. And there's so many, like, if you know sex workers, you know that like there's so many, they don't have to be spiritual or, you know, like be into that stuff or whatever, but they're just so natural. Like so many sex workers are just so naturally creative, naturally spiritual, naturally magical and magnetic. And it's like it's amazing, it's so beautiful, and it's always being squashed. It's like a light that's like always being squashed and people are always trying to put it out. But we just keep making it beautiful and making it more and more beautiful, and that's the life. And I think like with I didn't really know what I was getting myself into with this healing journey, but I feel like I was kind of just chose for it, and along the way I'm becoming enlightened to so many just different aspects of our world and the earth that we live on, and like aspects of fertility, abundance, creation, these things that people have worshipped like the whole time there has been people, because that's how we sustain, how we regenerate, and that's goddess energy. And like being able to place ourselves in the context, because you know, a lot of times like it's so a lot of times like the gaslighting is just so prevalent, and it's like even if you hold on, let me start over. Like, okay, so one of the things that Heaven on Earth does is it provides a supportive spiritual community, because we don't just make our own reality. Like, reality is a shared experience. Just like you were saying, like there's no such thing as an individual. Like we are all antennas off of this earth. We're all a part of it, and we're all sharing a consciousness. So we can't just make up a reality. And especially when, you know, somebody has experienced gaslighting, persistent, pervasive gaslighting from like many different sources, it can be extremely challenging to hold on to what is reality. And so just by like sharing space and knowing like we're coming together, like we're spiritually inclined, we're sex worker inclined, whether, you know, nobody has to say what they do, that's personal. And you know, that's important. That's really important to our space as a space that centers queer people of color, because you don't, you know, like everybody can't be open about it. Everybody can't be open as a sex worker, but we hope everyone can at least be open of being a supporter of sex workers. Um, you know, that's, you don't have to out yourself to do that. But we just, you know, for some people it's like physically impossible to admit that they're a sex worker because the shame and the stigma is so deep. So, you know, that's not a requirement. But we need each other to be able to like validate one another's reality in the climate where we're constantly under attack and where our light is constantly trying to be dimmed or turned down.
Right. And y'all have an app. I just saw. Can you mute again? Sorry. It's okay. But y'all have an app, you do Reiki trainings, you create spaces like the one that we're collaboratively producing. And it's you got t-shirts, you know, there's merch. But I really appreciate, and even in hearing your testimony, thinking about the ways that, and even hearing in other testimonies, honestly, the way that healing work, access to healing resources, has been really transformative in the lives and experiences of sex workers in New Orleans and beyond. And something that I come up against in my work, both in my research and my artistic work, and just the kind of rabbit holes I fall down, is how many of the kinds of work poor folks, poor Black folks, poor Black women, poor Black femmes have access to, all those types of labors get sexualized. You know, like people are always having to navigate either explicit or secret demands for sexual labor. You know, and I said in the hearing, and I'll say again, that I know that I'm here today because of people who made choices about how they would use their bodies in order to care for people, whether that was sex workers, or I even just learned, and I ain't gonna tell all the business, but I had a great aunt who was an abortionist back when that was like on the hush, you know, and I'm like, what this, and it makes sense because I feel like I wouldn't have the curiosities and, you know, the obsessions that I have now. I wouldn't have the stories on my heart that I have now if I didn't have that history. But it is major, the work that you do, and across all platforms, in giving voice, giving space, creating community for folks who often can't articulate out loud the choices that they're making about their bodies and how they are using their bodies in service to their own survival or the survival of their loved ones. So thank you for that.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, sorry, I just got distracted by the chat. I know we are coming up on time. Morgan was like, you could do whatever you want, but try to keep it a cute hour and a half. And we're coming just up on an hour and 20 minutes. But I'm wondering, Amira, do you have any like or no, this is what's important. We cannot get off the phone without saying, not the phone, but off the thing without talking about this. How do you like, you made an Instagram post recently that was connecting your work, Heaven on Earth, Hoes Are Healers, Reiki, to your lineage. You know, you was talking about Palestinian privilege. You were talking about the freedom fighters and your ancestry. And I would love to hear you kind of like riff on that here now. Like how do you see the work you've been called into as connected to your radical lineage?
Oh, thank you. I love these questions. So I have an article called Queer Muslim Sex Worker on Medium, which says more about it. But for Arab people and Muslim people and all tribal people, like, we're not, you know, indigenous people, we're not just ourselves. We like we've been talking about, like, we belong to our whole community. So, like, you know, there's these concepts of shame, around sexual shame and like what you should be ashamed of versus what you should be proud of, like what you should choose to highlight versus what you should choose to conceal. And so like for a lot of people like me, like doing sex work and being queer and you know being creative, being spiritual, like just kind of being different and being divergent, there those are things that you should conceal typically, like according to like how the family would feel. But um like what's not really seen is that like there's beyond like our struggles for freedom and like for stopping our oppressors from oppressing us and hurting us, like those same struggles get replicated down through the family. So we even have to stop our parents from oppressing us also. And we have to fight just to be individuals within our own families and within our own communities. And that has a profound impact on the sense of self. And so it's like, even at the smallest levels, it's recreating the things that are happening at the biggest levels. And it all matters. And what I take my spiritual work and my healing work is my activism, and that is my freedom fighting. I'm a freedom fighter on the spiritual plane, because I see how that's where we are also colonized, and it didn't just start on these lands. So we can have more control over what's in our own domain, like what's in our own bodies and what's in our own heads, than we can everything else in the whole world. And that's all we really are supposed. That's our domain. That's all we really are supposed to have. We can't. And I think especially in the past year, when it's been such a consistent focus on revolution. Not like revolution hasn't been ongoing, but I like that it got turned up a little extra in the past year, and that was really exciting, especially having to see everybody start to try to celebrate Memorial Day again and again. And I'm like, can we stop glorifying war? That I really hate that. I really hate to see that every year. And so to see, Memorial Day come and then the protests come was really exciting. And like it made me feel good. It made me feel happy to look back on, all the like everything that's been pushed to the surface, everything that was under the unconscious, the collective unconscious, not being talked about, that's been pushed to the surface since then. I mean, we all like we all deserve like we all deserve time off and self-care and everything, because that's a lot. Like we've just transmuted a whole lot. And I do see this, we're going to this summer now, and I do see like it to continue, like, a lot of things being pushed to the surface, but also for us to like just find our rhythm in it and find a sense of ease and a sense of grace with it, so that we can know like, okay, we're human. Like this is just what we do. Our ancestors have been doing this too, so this is not new. And we like, how are we going to enjoy ourselves to the optimal while we're here?
Yes, thank you so much, Amira. Thank you for sharing your wealth of wisdom. It's been such a delight to continue getting to know you. I mean, I'm looking forward to more. We just at the beginning. So I do I'm reaching for some way to bring us to a close. I think one thing we're leaving you with the note that this Memorial Day, don't venerate war, Instead, what you could do is spend the day, like reflecting internally about the ways you're gonna come into wholeness, the ways you're gonna remember your ancestors. Let's take let's take some light, some shine. Let's stop feeding the war machine, right? And think about other ways that we can come into memorialization. Inspired by Amira, inspired really by everyone I've had the privilege of talking to today. I don't have like a closing, like somatic offering or anything for everyone, but I just feel so much warmth on my heart today. So thank y'all for everyone watching. Again, thank you, Morgan, for inviting me. Thank you, Mama D, Dr. Mama D. Thank you, Miyuki Baker. Thank you, Amira. What shall we do? Maybe just a hug. You know, sometimes I organize with the New Orleans chapter of Southerners on New Ground. And sometimes at the end of a call, we'll just do like a virtual group hug. So I invite you to join me in a virtual group hug. I guess I'm trying to make sure there's not any last things I should have said. Y'all heard about the Church of Black Feminist Thought. I just mentioned song. Y'all heard about Heaven on Earth, Hoes Are Healers. Y'all heard about Dr. Doris Diosa Davenport. Y'all heard about my forthcoming poetry collection, Gossiping, inspired by my ancestors. And yeah, I think that's all. So now I invite you to just take a moment and expand yourself as big as you can. Like you're like reaching to grab all that goodness, all that wisdom, all that theory, all that truth that we just shared today. And we're going to pull it into ourselves and just like, dance it down. Thank y'all so much. Oh, thank you, Lisa. Thank you, everybody, for attending. I love you. I appreciate you. And I thank God for you.